The Hidden Lives of Medieval Scribes, a gentle journey through illuminated manuscripts and monastery walls. Welcome, gentle soul, to a sanctuary of quietude, a realm where time seemed to slow its relentless march. Tonight, we shall draw back the veil of centuries and step into the often unseen world of the medieval scribe. Forget the clamor of battles and the pronouncements of kings. Our focus lies within the hushed walls of monasteries, in the steady scratch of a quill, the delicate dance of a brush, and the painstaking creation of illuminated manuscripts. Let your mind soften, your breath deepen, as we embark on a gentle journey through the daily lives of these devoted artisans, the keepers of knowledge in a world slowly emerging from the shadows. We will explore their tools, their routines, the very air they breathed within the scriptorium, and the forgotten stories that lie patiently within the margins of their timeless creations. Prepare to be enveloped by the tranquility of their world, a world of meticulous detail, quiet dedication, and the enduring power of the written word. Chapter 1. Within the monastery walls, the scribe's sanctuary. For the medieval scribe, the monastery was not merely a place of worship, it was a sanctuary, a world set apart from the often turbulent and unpredictable rhythms of the secular outside. Imagine these monastic complexes, often nestled with deliberate intent in verdant, secluded valleys, or majestically perched upon tranquil hillsides, their sturdy stone walls rising from the landscape to offer a profound sense of peace, enclosure, and refuge. These were, in essence, islands of relative calm, serene havens where the relentless, often brutal, pace of everyday medieval life gave way to the deeply measured and harmonious cadence of prayer, quiet contemplation, and profoundly purposeful labor. Within these hallowed walls, the scribe found not only physical shelter from the prevailing chaos of the world but also a profound spiritual and intellectual home, a dedicated community bound by a shared vow and a collective purpose, the meticulous preservation and quiet propagation of knowledge. The very architecture of the monastery, designed with an ancient wisdom, eloquently spoke of this profound separation and unwavering dedication. Picture the imposing yet undeniably serene exterior, where each weathered stone seemed to bear silent witness to centuries of quiet devotion, enduring the passage of time with steadfast grace. The arched windows, like watchful, unblinking eyes, gazed out impassively upon the surrounding landscape, observing without judgment. Heavy, thick oak doors, often reinforced with intricate patterns of cold, dark iron strapping, provided a tangible, almost symbolic barrier against the clamor and distractions of the outside world, signifying the transition from one reality to another. As we allow our mind's eye to slowly pan across these enduring exterior features, we begin to appreciate the sheer solidity, the timeless permanence, and the quiet, stoic beauty of these monastic havens. They were, truly, places where the painstaking pursuit of sacred learning and intellectual illumination could flourish, undisturbed by the fleeting concerns of the material world. The subtle sounds that permeated this environment, the distant, deeply resonant tolling of a monastery bell, its ancient voice calling the monks to their immutable cycle of prayer, the gentle, almost imperceptible rustling of leaves in the monastery's carefully tended gardens, or the soft, continuous murmur of a nearby stream, all converged to create a rich, soothing auditory tapestry, a constant symphony of profound tranquility that underscored the monastic ideal. Stepping inside these venerable walls, we find ourselves immediately enveloped in a world meticulously designed to foster deep contemplation, unwavering order, and a pervasive sense of shared purpose. Consider, for a moment, the cloister, arguably the very heart of the monastic community. This covered walkway, typically forming a square or rectangular enclosure around a peaceful inner courtyard, provided a sacred space for quiet, solitary reflection and gentle, unhurried exercise, always sheltered from the unpredictable whims of the elements. Imagine monks, their figures rendered in soft focus, moving with a deliberate, almost meditative pace in their simple, often undyed habits, their bare or sandaled footsteps barely disturbing the smooth, cool stone paving. Perhaps one might be seen pausing, absorbed in reading from a small, handheld book, its pages whispering tales of ancient wisdom. Another might engage in a brief, hushed conversation, their voices barely rising above a whisper, respectful of the pervasive silence. The ethereal play of light and shadow beneath the gracefully arched arcades, the vibrant, living green of a central garden, often adorned with medicinal herbs and fragrant flowers, the gentle rhythm of monastic life unfolding in this enclosed, protected space, all of these elements coalesce to contribute to an atmosphere of profound serenity, a deep and abiding peace that settled upon the soul. Then there is the refectory, the communal dining hall, a place where the physical nourishment of the body was undertaken in an atmosphere of quiet reverence, often mirroring the spiritual nourishment of the soul. Picture the scene: long, sturdy, unadorned wooden tables, worn smooth by countless meals, monks seated in orderly rows, their movements deliberate and focused solely on the simple, yet essential, act of eating. Here, there was no room for hurriedness, no space for boisterous chatter or the distractions of worldly conversation. Instead, the silence was often punctuated by the soft, steady cadence of a single voice reading aloud from scripture, the lives of the saints, or theological texts. This practice ensured that even the act of eating became an integrated part of the monastic rhythm of contemplation and spiritual edification. The focus was intently on mindful sustenance, both corporeal and spiritual, taken in a manner that intrinsically encouraged deep mindfulness, profound gratitude, and an unwavering connection to the divine. Every chew, every swallow, was a quiet moment of reflection, transforming a basic human need into a profound, almost sacred ritual. And finally, with a sense of quiet anticipation, we arrive at the very heart of our interest, the nerve center of all knowledge preservation within the monastery, the scriptorium. This was not merely a room, it was a dedicated, sacred space, meticulously designed and consecrated for the incredibly intricate and painstaking work of the scribes. Imagine a long, often narrow room, stretching horizontally across our visual frame, its very design conceived to maximize the precious gift of natural light. Tall, slender arched windows, their panes often made of translucent, leaded glass, allowed the soft, diffused illumination to fall evenly and consistently upon each writing desk, ensuring optimal visibility for the minute details of the work. In some larger or more prosperous monasteries, rather than a single communal room, individual cubicles or carrels might have been arranged along a wall, offering each scribe a precious degree of personal space, quiet focus, and a measure of privacy in their arduous labor. Picture the scene: sturdy wooden lecterns, often angled for ergonomic comfort, their surfaces worn to a deep, subtle sheen by centuries of constant use and the countless touch of dedicated hands. Upon each lectern, the necessary tools were laid out with an almost ritualistic care and unwavering precision. Several quills, some freshly cut and razor-sharp, ready for their first inscription, others well-used, their tips testament to hours of diligent work. Small, often ceramic or subtly gleaming metal ink pots, filled to a precise level with dark, viscous fluid, often carefully prepared from oak galls and iron salts. Smooth, impeccably prepared parchment sheets, stretched taut and awaiting the first touch of the scribe's hand, and perhaps a small, specialized knife, used not for aggression, but for the delicate tasks of scraping away imperfections on the parchment or meticulously sharpening the quill's tip to a perfect point. The air within the scriptorium would have been incredibly still, almost reverent in its silence, punctuated only by the soft, rhythmic scratch of a quill upon parchment, the occasional, gentle rustling of a turning page, or the faint, almost imperceptible sigh of a monk adjusting his posture. It was a space consecrated to quiet, unwavering industry, to the slow, deliberate, and deeply spiritual transformation of fleeting thought and ancient wisdom into the enduring, tangible form of the written word. Every element, every detail, spoke of a profound respect for the task at hand. Even the smallest, most seemingly insignificant details within the scriptorium speak volumes about the dedication, foresight, and singular purpose of the scribes who toiled within its hallowed confines. Consider, for instance, the smooth, aged surface of a writing desk, not merely a flat board, but a piece of timber worn to a subtle, inviting sheen by generations of use. The imperceptible hollows where elbows rested, the faint, almost invisible scratches left by a misplaced quill or the edge of a parchment, each tells a quiet story of countless hours of diligent, focused labor. These were not pristine, untouched surfaces, but rather living testaments to continuous, patient work. Then there is the sturdy, yet often elegantly simple, construction of a book rest or lectern. These were designed with an intuitive understanding of ergonomics, crafted to hold heavy, often cumbersome volumes at the optimal angle for comfortable reading and meticulous copying, thereby minimizing strain on the scribe's precious eyes and often weary hands. The solid joinery, the carefully smoothed edges, all speak to a craftsmanship born of necessity and deep respect for both the work and the worker. And finally, let your gaze settle upon the intricate, often beautiful, patterns in the leaded glass of a scriptorium window. These were not clear panes, but carefully assembled pieces of translucent glass, often with subtle imperfections and variations in color. Their design served a dual purpose: to admit abundant light, essential for the painstaking detail of manuscript creation, while simultaneously diffusing that light into a soft, gentle glow, preventing harsh glare and creating an atmosphere of calm illumination across the scriptorium floor. These details, far from being mere functional elements, were integral components of the carefully constructed environment that nurtured the scribe's profound craft. They contributed immeasurably to the overall atmosphere of quiet concentration, meticulous care, and unwavering dedication. The scriptorium was, in essence, the scribe's most sacred sanctuary, a place of unparalleled peace and unwavering purpose, nestled securely within the larger, protective sanctuary of the monastery itself, a crucible where knowledge was patiently, lovingly, and eternally brought into being. Chapter 2. The humble tools of creation, quill, ink, and parchment. Having explored the tranquil sanctuary of the medieval monastery, we now turn our attention to the very heart of the scribe's daily existence, the humble tools of creation. These were not instruments of power or wealth, but simple, natural implements, honed by centuries of tradition and imbued with the quiet dedication of countless hands. Each tool, from the feather plucked from a goose to the carefully prepared ink, held a story of meticulous craft and profound patience, a testament to the slow, deliberate process of transforming thought into enduring text. At the very core of the scribe's craft lay the quill. More than just a pen, the quill was a living extension of the scribe's hand, a delicate instrument that required both precise preparation and sensitive handling. Imagine, if you will, the raw material, a sturdy feather, most commonly from a goose, but sometimes from swans, crows, or even turkeys. Each feather had its unique qualities, its subtle flex and curve. The process of transforming this natural object into a functional writing tool was an art in itself. Picture a scribe, perhaps in a quiet corner of the scriptorium, not writing, but preparing. They would select a feather, often from the left wing of the bird, as this provided a natural curve that fit comfortably in a right-hand scribe's grip. The barbs near the tip would be stripped away, leaving a smooth, cylindrical shaft. Then came the intricate work of quilling or nicking, the shaping of the nib. With a small, sharp knife, known appropriately as a penknife, the scribe would meticulously cut the tip of the quill. This wasn't a single cut, but a series of precise, delicate incisions. First, a diagonal cut to form the writing edge, then a split down the center to allow ink to flow freely, and finally, subtle cuts to thin and shape the nib, creating the perfect flexibility and ink retention. Each cut was a moment of intense concentration, a silent dance between the keen edge of the knife and the resilient structure of the feather. The objective was a nib that was neither too stiff nor too soft, one that would hold just enough ink without blotting, and would glide smoothly, almost effortlessly, across the prepared surface of the parchment, producing characters of consistent thickness and clarity. This preparation was a daily ritual, a quiet meditation on precision, ensuring that the primary instrument of their devotion was perfectly attuned to the task. The soft rasp of the knife on the quill, the subtle whisper of feather as it was shaped, these were the sounds of beginnings, of quiet readiness. Next to the quill, resting patiently in its small container, was the ink. Unlike the mass-produced inks of today, medieval inks were often prepared by the scribes themselves, or by designated monastic artisans. This was a process of slow, natural chemistry, transforming raw materials into a fluid that would endure for centuries. The most common type of ink used for writing text was iron gall ink, renowned for its deep, rich black color and remarkable permanence. Its primary ingredients were humble, yet powerful, oak galls, strange, marble-like growths found on oak trees, caused by the larvae of gall wasps, iron vitriol, or ferrous sulfate, a metallic salt, and gum arabic, a sticky resin derived from acacia trees, which served as a binder, preventing the pigment from simply running off the parchment. Imagine the quiet process of ink making. Oak galls, collected patiently from the forest, would be crushed or pounded, releasing their tannic acid. This powder would then be steeped in water, often for days, allowing the tannins to leach out, creating a murky, brownish liquid. To this, the iron vitriol would be added, initiating a chemical reaction that would transform the solution into a darker, more complex compound. Finally, the gum arabic would be dissolved and stirred in, providing the necessary viscosity and adherence. The mixture would often be left to steep and mature, sometimes for weeks, allowing the colors to deepen and stabilize. The resulting ink, initially a pale gray or brown, would slowly darken over time as it oxidized on the parchment, eventually developing into the characteristic deep, permanent black that graces so many ancient manuscripts. The scent of the ink, earthy and slightly metallic, would have been a constant, subtle presence in the scriptorium. Beyond the standard black, scribes also prepared vibrant colored inks, primarily for illumination, often using ground minerals or plant extracts, each requiring its own unique, patient process of grinding, mixing, and binding. And then, there was the parchment itself, the very skin upon which knowledge would be imprinted. This was perhaps the most time-consuming and expensive of all the scribes' materials. Parchment was made from the skins of animals, typically sheep, goats, or calves. the finest quality, known as vellum, came from very young calves or stillborn animals. The process was long, arduous, and required immense skill and patience. Picture the raw animal hide, perhaps arriving at the monastery. It would first be thoroughly cleaned, then soaked for days in a solution of lime and water, which helped to remove the hair and fatty tissues. After this soaking, the hide would be stretched tautly onto a wooden frame, known as a hearse. While still damp and stretched, the most physical and perhaps surprising part of the process would begin. The hide would be meticulously scraped on both sides with a curved, crescent-shaped knife called a lunellum. This was not merely to remove remaining hair. It was a delicate, repetitive scraping to thin the hide, to smooth its surface, and to remove any last vestiges of flesh or fat, ensuring a perfectly even thickness and a clean, absorbent surface. Imagine the quiet, rhythmic sound of the lunellum scraping across the stretched hide, a soft, almost hypnotic whisper of careful labor. After scraping, the parchment would be allowed to dry slowly on the frame, under controlled conditions to prevent warping or tearing. Once dry, it would be further refined by polishing it with pumice stone or chalk, creating that distinctively smooth, velvety surface that was so receptive to ink. The finished parchment was a testament to transformation, from a raw, organic material to a durable, luminous surface capable of preserving text for a millennium or more. Its subtle translucence, its unique grain, its occasional tiny imperfections, each contributed to its character, making every sheet a unique canvas. The tactile sensation of the parchment, cool and smooth, would have been intimately familiar to the scribe's fingertips. The cost of parchment was immense. A single large book could require the skins of dozens, even hundreds, of animals. This scarcity and expense instilled a profound sense of reverence in the scribes. Every square inch of parchment was precious, not to be wasted. This dictated careful planning, precise ruling, and a disciplined hand. The very act of laying out a page, meticulously drawing faint lines for the text columns and baselines with a lead point or a stylus, was an exercise in foresight and economy. Armed with these meticulously prepared tools, the responsive quill, the enduring ink, and the precious parchment, the scribe would finally settle down at their lectern. The ambient sounds of the scriptorium would now include the steady, rhythmic scratch of the quill upon the parchment, a sound both delicate and insistent, marking the steady progress of the work. This was the true heartbeat of the scriptorium, a constant reminder of the continuous flow of knowledge being transferred, copied, and preserved. It was a meditative sound, a testament to focused concentration. The scribe's hand would move with a quiet, practiced grace, guiding the quill across the ruled lines, forming each letter with precision and consistency. The entire process was slow, deliberate, and deeply immersive. There were no quick fixes, no instant edits. Every stroke was a commitment, every page a testament to unwavering patience. The humble tools, born of nature and shaped by human hands, became the silent partners in this monumental work, allowing the quiet whispers of ancient words to resonate through the ages, preserved not in grand pronouncements, but in the steady, patient rhythm of a quill on parchment. Chapter 3: A Day in the Scriptorium, Rhythm, Discipline, and Quiet Focus. Within the monastery walls, life was governed by a profound sense of rhythm and discipline. For the scribe, every day unfolded with a predictable, almost meditative cadence, a quiet adherence to the monastic schedule. This wasn't a life of frantic activity, but one of measured purpose, where the pursuit of sacred knowledge was woven into the very fabric of time. A day in the scriptorium was a day of quiet focus, an immersive journey into the world of letters and ancient wisdom. The scribe's day often began long before the sun had fully illuminated the world, with the pre-dawn call to matins, the first monastic service of the day. Imagine rising from a simple pallet in the cool, dark dormitory, the air thick with the quiet breathing of sleeping brethren. The journey to the monastery church or chapel would be undertaken in near silence, lit only by the faint glow of a candle or a lantern carried by a monk ahead. The solemn chants of matins and lauds would fill the hushed space, preparing the mind for the rigorous work ahead, cleansing it of worldly distractions. This early communion was not merely a duty, it was a centering, a quiet invocation of divine guidance for the tasks of the day. After these early prayers, and perhaps a frugal meal of bread and ale in the refectory, the scribes would make their way, with quiet purpose, to the scriptorium. Picture the room as dawn slowly begins to break, soft, diffused light, perhaps from an unseen window high above, gradually illuminating the empty lecterns. There's a palpable sense of anticipation in the stillness, the quiet readiness of a dedicated space. A single, stylized monastic figure, the scribe we are observing, might be seen entering the room, their footsteps barely audible, moving slowly and purposefully towards their assigned desk. They might carry a small, well-worn book of prayers or a fresh stack of prepared parchment sheets, their movements imbued with a quiet reverence for the work they were about to undertake. Before the actual copying began, there was a meticulous process of preparation. The precious parchment sheet, carefully chosen for its quality, would be unrolled and gently smoothed flat on the lectern's surface. Parchment, being an animal skin, could sometimes retain a subtle curl, so it often needed to be weighted down. A smooth stone, a specially crafted wooden block, or a small, polished lead weight, often called a pez, would be carefully placed on the corners or edges of the sheet to hold it perfectly flat and steady. Then came the vital step of ruling the page. This was an exercise in absolute precision and foresight. Using a pricker, a pointed tool, or a stylus, the scribe would meticulously mark tiny, almost invisible holes along the very edges of the parchment, serving as guides. From these tiny pinpricks, faint, precise lines would be drawn across the parchment with a lead point, a piece of lead or lead alloy, or a hard, dry stylus. These lines would define the text columns, the baselines upon which each line of text would rest, and the marginal lines for notes or illuminations. This pre-planning ensured perfect alignment, consistent line spacing, and a clean, organized layout for the entire manuscript. It was a laborious process, but essential for the beauty and legibility of the finished work. The sound would be a faint, almost imperceptible scratch, a whisper of preparation. With the parchment prepared, the scribe would then carefully dip their freshly sharpened quill into the inkwell. This was not a hurried dunk, but a deliberate, almost graceful motion, allowing the quill to absorb just the right amount of ink, enough to write several words without blotting, but not so much as to drip or smudge. The scribe would then position themselves comfortably at their lectern, their body aligned with the task, their eyes focused. Often, the source manuscript, the book they were meticulously copying, would be placed on a separate book stand beside their own parchment. Their hand, perhaps holding a pointer, a stylus or even just a finger, would slowly follow the text in the source, guiding their eyes to the words to be transferred. And then, the quiet magic began, the act of copying. The quill's tip would gently touch the parchment, and with a soft, rhythmic scratching sound, letters would begin to form, one by one. The scribe's hand would move with a quiet, practiced grace, guiding the quill across the faint, ruled lines. Each letter, each word, each sentence was rendered with painstaking precision and remarkable consistency. This was not creative writing in the modern sense. It was an act of faithful reproduction, a sacred duty to transmit knowledge without error. The scribe's mind would be deeply immersed, perhaps subvocalizing the words as they wrote, ensuring accuracy. Hours would pass in this deep, unbroken concentration. The only sounds would be the persistent, delicate scratch of the quill, the faint, rustling whisper of a turning page from the source text, or the gentle sigh of the scribe themselves. Errors, though diligently avoided, were an inevitable part of the process. When a mistake was made, a misplaced letter, a blot of ink, the scribe would employ a small, sharp knife, the same penknife used for shaping quills, to meticulously scrape away the offending error from the parchment's surface. This was a delicate operation, requiring a steady hand and immense patience, as scraping too deeply could thin or even tear the precious parchment. The scraped surface would then often be gently smoothed with a bone folder or piece of pumice before the correct letters could be carefully reinscribed. This process emphasizes the irreversibility of errors and the profound need for precision in a time before easy deletion or correction. The scribe's day in the scriptorium was segmented by the monastic hours of prayer. At designated times, the work would cease, quills would be carefully cleaned and set aside, and the monks would proceed, in silent procession, to the chapel for the next service, terce, sext, none. These interruptions, far from being distractions, provided moments of physical rest, spiritual renewal, and a communal rhythm that balanced the solitary intensity of their work. After each service, they would return to their desks, resuming their quiet labor with renewed focus. Midday in the scriptorium would be a scene of profound, shared quietude. The sun would be higher, illuminating the room with bright but still diffused light, revealing dust motes dancing in the air. Monks would be seen at their lecterns, their heads bowed in silent concentration, their forms still and composed. The atmosphere would be almost sacred in its stillness, broken only by the whispers of their work. There was a unique camaraderie in this shared silence, a collective devotion to the task. As the day progressed into late afternoon or early evening, the natural light would soften, taking on a warmer, more golden hue. Some scribes might begin to finish their allotted work for the day, carefully packing up their tools, arranging their parchment, and preparing their quills for the next morning. Others, perhaps working on particularly intricate or lengthy projects, might continue their labor, their figures illuminated by the faint, flickering glow of a carefully positioned candle or an oil lamp. This willingness to work into the fading light emphasizes the immense dedication and long hours required to produce these monumental works. At the close of the day, before compline, the final monastic service, the scribes would meticulously put away their tools, cover their work, and ensure the scriptorium was left in a state of perfect order. Each completed section of text on a parchment page would be a testament to hours of quiet, focused labor. The script, though copied, was perfectly aligned, neat, and remarkably consistent, a triumph of discipline and skill. Subtle variations in ink density, or the faint, almost ghostly impression of the ruling lines beneath the text, might be visible upon close inspection, revealing the human touch. Each completed passage was a tangible fragment of knowledge preserved, a beautiful, enduring record of devotion, a quiet satisfaction for the scribe whose tireless hand had brought it into being. This was the enduring rhythm of their days, a silent symphony of ink and parchment, preserving the whispers of the past for the quiet contemplation of the future. Chapter 4. The Art of Illumination, Gold, Pigment, and Intricate Beauty. As we continue our tranquil journey through the scribe's world, we now turn to the most visually captivating aspect of their craft, the art of illumination. This was the quiet symphony of color and light, the painstaking process that transformed a mere copied text into a breathtaking work of art, a visual feast designed to inspire contemplation and devotion. Illumination was more than decoration. It was an interpretive layer, a visual commentary that brought the sacred words to vibrant life within the hushed monastery walls. Imagine a scribe, not with a simple quill for text, but now with an array of delicate brushes and a palette of shimmering colors. The illumined desk would be a quiet explosion of potential, bathed in a soft, ethereal light that seemed to bless each pigment. Small, unassuming pots, holding finely ground minerals and jewel tones, the deep, celestial lapis lazuli for blues, the verdant malachite for greens, the fiery vermilion for reds, would be meticulously arranged alongside tiny, almost impossibly fine-tipped brushes, a smooth, polished agate burnisher, and the almost weightless shimmer of gold leaf in a small, shallow dish. Each component, a testament to rarity and craftsmanship, spoke of the immense value placed upon these artistic embellishments. The most striking element of illumination was often the liberal use of gold. This wasn't merely paint, it was genuine gold, hammered into sheets so impossibly thin they were almost ethereal. The process of applying gold leaf, known as gilding, was a delicate dance between precision and patience. First, the scribe or illuminator would carefully apply a thin, raised layer of a special adhesive ground, often called gesso, a mixture of plaster, chalk, and glue, to the exact area of the parchment where the gold was intended to shine. This gesso could be built up slightly to create a subtly raised, luminous surface. Once the gesso was dry, but still slightly tacky, the true magic would begin. With a delicate touch, the illuminator might breathe gently upon the gesso to activate its stickiness, creating the perfect microscopic moisture. Then, with an almost reverent precision, a tiny, fragile square of gold leaf, lifted perhaps by the static electricity of a squirrel hair brush, would be carefully laid upon the prepared gesso. It would adhere instantly, mirroring the light. But the work was not yet complete. The gold, at this stage, would appear dull and matte. To unleash its full brilliance, the illuminator would take a polished agate burnisher, a smooth, hard stone tool, and gently, with incredibly light and consistent pressure, rub the surface of the gold leaf. With each slow, circular motion, the gold would transform, moving from a soft sheen to a radiant, mirror-like brilliance, reflecting light with breathtaking intensity. The sound would be a faint, almost imperceptible whisper of stone against gold, a quiet testament to the transformation of humble materials into celestial glory. This painstaking process ensured that the gold would shimmer and gleam for centuries, catching the light with every subtle movement of the page, seemingly illuminating the sacred text from within. Once the gold was burnished, the vibrant world of pigment would be introduced. Medieval pigments were almost exclusively derived from natural sources, ground minerals, pulverized insects, and plant extracts. Each color had its own unique properties, its own method of preparation, and often its own specific uses and symbolic meanings. Lapis lazuli, imported from distant Afghanistan, provided the most exquisite and expensive blue, reserved for the most sacred figures or significant initial letters. Vermilion, derived from mercury sulfide, yielded a brilliant red, often used for emphasis or decorative flourishes. Greens came from malachite or verdigris, yellows from saffron or orpiment, whites from lead white or chalk. Each pigment required meticulous grinding, often by hand, until it reached a superfine powder. This powder would then be mixed with a binder, typically egg yolk tempera, egg yolk diluted with water or vinegar, which allowed the paint to adhere beautifully to the parchment and dry quickly, creating a durable, opaque layer of color. Imagine the illuminator, brush in hand, with a concentration that bordered on the meditative. Their delicate, fine-tipped brush, often made from squirrel hair, would be dipped into a small shell or pot of pigment. With incredible precision and control, they would then apply the vibrant, yet inherently muted, color to the tiny details of an intricate initial letter, the flowing lines of a vine scroll, or the minute features of a miniature scene. The work was slow, requiring a steady hand and endless patience. Colors would often be applied in layers, building up depth and luminosity, with each layer allowed to dry completely before the next was added. Outlines would be drawn first, then solid colors applied, followed by shading, highlights, and the final, minute details. The motifs of illumination were as diverse as the scribes themselves, yet they often followed established traditions. Initial letters, particularly at the beginning of chapters or significant passages, were often the focal point. These could be simple, elegant enlarged letters, or they could evolve into historiated initials, where a small scene or figure was depicted within the letter itself, often illustrating the text it introduced. Even more complex were inhabited initials, where whimsical or grotesque figures, perhaps animals or mythical creatures, playfully inhabited the letter's form. Borders would often be filled with intricate vine scrolls, delicate foliage patterns, sometimes populated by the charming and often mischievous drolleries, tiny, often humorous or strange figures that would frolic in the margins, offering a subtle, quiet counterpoint to the solemnity of the main text. Beyond individual letters and borders, entire full-page miniatures were often created, depicting elaborate scenes from the Bible, the lives of saints, or sometimes even contemporary monastic life. These were truly miniature paintings, each stroke of the brush a testament to artistic skill and devotional commitment. The colors, while rich, maintained a certain harmonious quality, derived from their natural origins, creating a sense of quiet splendor rather than jarring intensity. What makes these illuminated manuscripts so captivating, even centuries later, is not just their beauty, but their inherent humanity. Upon closer inspection, one might occasionally discover subtle imperfections, a very faint pencil guideline that was not fully erased before the pigment was applied, a tiny, almost hidden marginal drollery, a whimsical rabbit playing a flute, a mischievous monkey, or a strange hybrid creature, tucked away in a corner, a quiet moment of human expression from the illuminator. Or perhaps a slight variation in the thickness of a gold line, betraying the tremble of an aged hand. These minute details remind us that these weren't mechanically produced items, but the fruit of individual artistic effort, often anonymously given over to the glory of God. Each variation, each unique touch, whispered a forgotten story of the individual artisan, making the manuscript feel deeply personal and intimately connected to the quiet lives that created it. The creation of an illuminated manuscript was a profound act of devotion, a fusion of disciplined copying and artistic expression. It was a testament to patience, skill, and an unwavering belief in the power of beauty to elevate the sacred word. Each shimmering gold detail, each meticulously applied pigment, was a silent prayer, a quiet offering of artistry, transforming the humble page into a luminous portal to understanding and contemplation. As we gaze upon these intricate beauties, allow their quiet splendor to gently fill your senses, drawing you deeper into the peaceful realm of the medieval scribe, and inviting a serene descent into restful slumber. Chapter 5, Guardians of Knowledge, the Scribe's Role in Preserving History. As the soft glow of the scriptorium begins to deepen around us, we come to recognize the profound, enduring significance of the scribe's humble task. Beyond the meticulous craft of copying and the vibrant artistry of illumination, the medieval scribe served a far grander purpose. They were the silent guardians of knowledge, the unwavering preservers of history, patiently transmitting the wisdom of the past to the nascent future. In an era where printing presses were centuries away and literacy was the privilege of a few, the scribe was the indispensable bridge, meticulously spanning the vast chasm between ancient thought and nascent modernity. Imagine, if you will, the monastery library. It was not a place of hurried browse, but a sanctuary of profound quiet and deep reverence. Picture towering shelves, stretching high into the muted light, laden with the accumulated wisdom of centuries, not merely religious texts, but a remarkably diverse array of knowledge. There were philosophical treatises from ancient Greek and Roman thinkers, meticulously copied and recopied, ensuring their timeless arguments endured. Historical chronicles, detailing the rise and fall of empires, the lives of kings, and the customs of bygone eras, were diligently transcribed, preserving the fragile narrative of human experience. Beyond these, the monastic libraries housed scientific texts, often inherited from classical antiquity or translated from Arabic scholarship, astronomical tables charting the movements of celestial bodies, medical texts outlining ancient remedies and anatomical understanding, and intricate botanical drawings detailing the properties of plants. Even works on grammar, rhetoric, and arithmetic found their place. Each book, each scroll, was a precious repository, a distillation of human thought, laboriously brought into being or meticulously preserved by the quiet, dedicated work of countless scribes. The atmosphere in such a library would have been one of palpable stillness, broken only by the soft turning of a page or the almost reverent intake of breath from a monk absorbed in study, emphasizing the sheer volume and profundity of knowledge contained within those quiet walls. This preservation was not without its challenges. The medieval period was often marked by upheaval, invasions, famines, and the slow decay of time itself posed constant threats to the fragile manuscripts. In times of impending danger, perhaps the distant rumors of a raiding party, or the faint, ominous smoke on the horizon, the monastery itself might transform into a fortress, but the monk's most precious treasures were the books. Imagine a subtle, wide illustration of a monastery under such a distant, looming threat, but the immediate foreground remains utterly calm. Monks are seen moving with an unhurried yet purposeful urgency, carefully carrying the most valuable manuscripts to secure, hidden places within the monastery's deepest vaults or most inaccessible towers. The focus is on the act of protection, the profound value placed on knowledge over material possessions, rather than on dramatic conflict. This quiet act of safeguarding, this unwavering commitment to the survival of texts, speaks volumes about the scribes' understanding of their vital role in protecting humanity's intellectual heritage. Even in peaceful times, the threat of decay was constant. Parchment could become brittle, ink could fade, bindings could weaken. Therefore, another crucial aspect of the scribe's role was restoration and repair. Picture a quiet, intimate scene, a monk, perhaps elderly, his face etched with patience, meticulously cleaning a fragile, damaged manuscript page. His hands move with infinite care, using simple tools, perhaps a soft brush to remove dust, a damp cloth to gently rehydrate a stiff page, or a delicate needle and thread to repair a torn binding. This visual emphasizes the fragile nature of the books themselves and the profound, almost tender dedication required for their upkeep. Every mend, every reinforcement, was an act of quiet reverence, a silent promise to extend the life of the ancient words. The work was slow, painstaking, and often required specialized knowledge, a testament to the fact that their guardianship extended far beyond mere copying. The impact of this diligent preservation, though often unseen and unheralded, resonated through centuries. The texts meticulously copied and guarded within monastic libraries formed the bedrock upon which later intellectual and cultural developments were built. Without the scribes, the knowledge of classical antiquity, its philosophy, science, medicine, and literature, would have been largely lost to the Western world, plunging Europe into a truly dark age. Instead, thanks to their quiet, relentless labor, these sparks of ancient wisdom were kept alive, carefully nurtured, until the conditions were ripe for their re-emergence. Consider a gentle transition to later periods, subtly demonstrating this profound influence. Picture, for example, a slightly more detailed, yet still softly rendered, illustration of a medieval university classroom, centuries after the heyday of the scriptoria. A scholar, perhaps a renowned theologian or philosopher, is lecturing from a large, open book, a manuscript that very likely originated in a monastic scriptorium. Students, stylized and quietly attentive, are seen diligently taking notes on their own smaller parchments or wax tablets. This visual subtly links the solitary work of the monastic scribe to the vibrant, burgeoning intellectual growth of the universities, demonstrating how preserved knowledge fueled new thought and discussion. Or imagine a still illustration of a medieval cartographer at work, their head bent over a large, unrolled map. They might be carefully using information gleaned from ancient geographical texts, painstakingly copied by scribes, to accurately chart the known world. Nearby, a physician might be studying an illuminated herbal, its detailed botanical drawings and descriptions of medicinal plants, all derived from classical sources preserved by monastic hands, guiding their understanding of healing. These quiet scenes illustrate the practical, tangible application of the knowledge inherited through the scribe's dedication, showing how the quiet whispers of the past profoundly shaped the present and future. In essence, the medieval scribe was the bedrock of a civilization's memory, the silent archivist of human endeavor. Their anonymous work, performed day after day within the hushed quiet of the scriptorium, ensured that the great ideas, the sacred stories, and the accumulated wisdom of generations would not vanish into the mists of time. Their legacy is not found in grand monuments, but in the countless pages of meticulously copied and beautifully illuminated manuscripts that survive to this day. Each line of script, each gilded initial, each carefully mended tear, whispers a story of their unwavering commitment, their quiet devotion, and their profound impact on the course of history. As we conclude this contemplation of the scribe as guardian, allow your mind to absorb the enduring legacy of their quiet work. Picture a final, wide, almost abstract watercolor wash of overlapping, subtly translucent layers of ancient script and illuminated fragments. The colors are muted, reflecting the soft, aged tones of parchment, while the indistinct text hints at countless stories and pieces of knowledge, gently woven together. This image slowly, serenely fades to a deep, peaceful black, signifying the quiet passage of time and the timeless, enduring power of the written word, carefully preserved, always waiting to be discovered anew. Let this quiet understanding guide you into a deep, untroubled rest. Chapter 6. The Voices in the Margins, Annotation, Correction, and Drolleries. As the steady, rhythmic scratch of the quill continues its quiet work, shaping the elegant lines of monastic script, our gentle journey through the scribe's hidden world now leads us to a fascinating realm often overlooked, the voices in the margins. These are the subtle whispers and occasional playful shouts from those who came after the initial text was laid down, or even from the very scribes themselves, adding layers of meaning, correction, and sometimes unexpected whimsy to the solemnity of the main body. The margins of a medieval manuscript were far from empty spaces. They were vibrant, living canvases where intellectual engagement, human error, and delightful creativity converged in a silent dialogue across the centuries. Consider first the profound importance of annotation and correction. In an age before standardized textbooks and widespread printing, manuscripts were living documents, constantly scrutinized, debated, and updated. A scribe's initial copy, however meticulous, was rarely the final word. Scholars, teachers, and even subsequent scribes would often add their own glosses, explanatory notes, linguistic clarifications, cross-references to other texts, or even critical commentary directly into the margins. Imagine a diligent monastic scholar, perhaps centuries after a text was first penned, poring over a venerable volume, his brow furrowed in concentration. With a finer-tipped quill or a sharp stylus, he would meticulously add a tiny, neat note in a cramped but legible hand, precisely positioned next to a particular line of text. This note might explain an archaic word, clarify a complex theological concept, or even point out a subtle contradiction, providing vital context for future readers. This was not a disrespectful act, it was a profound intellectual engagement, a continuation of the scholarly conversation that spanned generations. These marginal notes, often written in a smaller script, sometimes even in a different ink, create a fascinating layer of interpretation, revealing how knowledge was understood and transmitted over time. They are the quiet echoes of scholarly debate, preserved in ink. But the margins also bore witness to the very human process of correction. No scribe, however skilled or dedicated, was entirely immune to error. A slip of the hand, a momentary lapse of concentration, could result in a misplaced letter, an omitted word, or an accidental ink blot. Unlike modern digital text, where corrections are instantaneous and invisible, errors in manuscripts required a physical intervention. Picture the scribe, his breath held, carefully taking his small, sharp penknife, the same one used for shaping quills, and with infinite care, scraping away the offending ink from the delicate surface of the parchment. This was a precarious operation, too much pressure, and the parchment could be thinned or even torn, rendering the page useless. Once the ink was meticulously removed, leaving only a slightly abraded spot, the correct letters or words would then be reinscribed, often in an almost imperceptibly different shade of ink, a subtle scar testifying to the human fallibility and the scribe's unyielding pursuit of perfection. Sometimes, if the error was minor, a small dot or dash might simply be placed beneath the incorrect letter, with the correction written above or in the margin. These seemingly minor interventions are powerful reminders of the meticulousness required and the inherent value placed on accuracy in an age of scarcity. Beyond the purely functional, the margins sometimes offered a rare, intimate glimpse into the personal lives and thoughts of the scribes themselves. Imagine finding, tucked away in a corner of a solemn theological treatise, a tiny, almost secret note, written in a cramped, hurried hand, "Oh, my hand aches," or "It is terribly cold today," or "Thank God, almost done." These fleeting exclamations, utterly human and relatable across centuries, are powerful testaments to the physical toll of their work and the simple realities of their daily existence. They are the quiet, unbidden voices of individuals reaching out from the distant past, reminding us that behind the disciplined facade of monastic life were human beings, with their own weariness, their own joys, and their own moments of quiet frustration. These rare personal annotations offer a profound sense of connection to the hidden lives of those who spent their days in quiet devotion to the written word. And then, we come to the truly enchanting inhabitants of the margins, the drolleries. These were the whimsical, often fantastical, and sometimes downright bizarre figures that populated the borders and initial letters of illuminated manuscripts, particularly from the 13th century onwards. Far from being random doodles, these marginal drolleries were often the playful expressions of the illuminators, offering a delightful counterpoint to the solemnity of the sacred texts. Imagine turning a page of a weighty theological text, only to discover a mischievous rabbit playing a lute, a snail jousting with a knight, a bird wearing a bishop's mitre, or a fantastical hybrid creature, half human, half beast, engaged in some comical or absurd activity. These drolleries often defied easy categorization. Some were purely decorative, intricate interwoven patterns of foliage and grotesque faces. Others were clearly humorous, even satirical, perhaps subtly poking fun at monastic life, societal norms, or even the seriousness of the text itself. Still others remain enigmatic, their meaning lost to the whims of time, leaving modern viewers to ponder the delightful strangeness of the medieval mind. The colors used for drolleries were often as vibrant as those in the main illuminations, but their context allowed for a greater freedom of expression, a quiet explosion of creativity in the otherwise ordered world of the manuscript. They were a testament to the unexpected wit and artistic freedom that could flourish even within the confines of monastic discipline. These little figures, often no larger than a thumbnail, invite us to lean closer, to search for the hidden smiles and quiet jokes embedded in the very fabric of the page. They are the silent laughter echoing through the scriptorium, a gentle rebellion of the imagination. The presence of drolleries, along with scholarly glosses and personal notes, reminds us that medieval manuscripts were not static artifacts, but dynamic, evolving creations. They were platforms for ongoing dialogue, for human connection, and for the expression of both profound thought and playful wit. The margins, once perceived as blank spaces, were in fact teeming with life, intellectual life, personal life, and imaginative life. They offered a space for expansion, for critique, for human expression that transcended the strictures of the main text. They provided an outlet for the scribe or illuminator to leave their subtle, often anonymous, mark on the grand tapestry of preserved knowledge. As we conclude our contemplation of these voices from the margins, allow your mind to gently wander through the intricate details of a medieval page, seeing beyond the initial lines of text. Envision the quiet scholar meticulously adding a clarifying note, the diligent scribe carefully scraping away an error, and the whimsical illuminator subtly inserting a humorous drollery. Each mark, each whisper, each tiny figure, contributes to the rich, layered beauty and enduring humanity of these ancient books. Let this understanding of the vibrant, hidden life within the margins soothe your thoughts, guiding you into a deep and peaceful rest, where the quiet voices of the past can gently accompany you into slumber. Chapter 7: Unsung Heroes, The Roles Beyond the Quill. Our tranquil exploration of the medieval bookmaking process has largely focused on the scribe, the central figure whose quill brought words to life. Yet, to truly appreciate the hidden lives within these monastic walls, we must acknowledge the unsung heroes, the quiet, dedicated individuals whose vital roles extended far beyond the immediate act of writing. These were the artisans, the laborers, the preparers, whose tireless work formed the invisible scaffolding upon which the scribe's craft could flourish. Each finished manuscript was not the product of a single hand, but the culmination of a collective, often anonymous, dedication, a silent symphony of specialized skills working in harmonious concert. Imagine a monastery as a self-sufficient microcosm, a hub of diverse crafts and quiet industry. Before a single word could be written, before an initial could be illuminated, countless hours of meticulous preparation were required. At the very foundation of manuscript production lay the arduous and skilled work of the parchmenter, or parchmentarius. This was a specialized task, often performed within the monastery itself or by a lay artisan living nearby who supplied the monastic scriptorium. As we discussed previously, parchment, derived from animal skins, was the costly and time-consuming substrate for all written work. The parchmenter's role was physically demanding and required an intimate understanding of the material. Picture the parchmenter at their work, their hands moving with seasoned expertise. The raw animal hide, often sheep, goat, or calf, would undergo a transformative journey. First, it would be thoroughly cleaned and then immersed for days, sometimes weeks, in a lime solution. This alkaline bath served a crucial purpose. It loosened the hair and flesh, making them easier to remove. After the soaking, the hide would be removed from the vat, still slick and heavy, and then meticulously stretched taut onto a large wooden frame known as a house. This stretching was critical. It prevented the hide from shrinking unevenly during drying and ensured a smooth, flat surface. The hide would be secured to the frame with numerous cords and pegs, each adjusted to achieve perfect, even tension, creating a drum-like tautness. Then came the delicate yet forceful act of scraping. With a specialized, curved blade called a lunellum, the parchmenter would expertly scrape both sides of the stretched hide. This wasn't a brutal hack, but a rhythmic, precise motion, removing every last vestige of hair, flesh, and fat. The scraping also served to thin the hide to a uniform thickness, making it pliable and receptive to ink. Imagine the soft, wet rasp of the lunellum against the stretched skin, a sound that would become a quiet underscore to the parchmenter's day. It was a meditative, physically demanding process that required immense patience and a keen eye for detail. After the scraping, the parchment would be carefully dried on the frame in a cool, airy environment, preventing cracks or warping. Finally, it might be further smoothed and polished with pumice stone or chalk, creating that distinctively supple, velvety surface that was a joy for the scribe's quill. The quality of the finished parchment directly impacted the scribe's work. A perfectly prepared sheet was a testament to the parchmenter's unsung skill. Beyond the parchmenter, there were the pigment and ink makers. While some scribes might prepare their own inks, especially the common iron gall ink, the creation of vibrant, stable pigments for illumination was often a highly specialized craft. This often involved the grinding of rare and precious minerals. Imagine hands, perhaps stained with the subtle hues of their craft, meticulously grinding vibrant minerals in a stone mortar with a heavy pestle. The exquisite blue of lapis lazuli, imported from distant lands, would be carefully pulverized from rough, crystalline chunks into the finest, most delicate powder, each granule coaxed into release. Similarly, the deep greens of malachite, the fiery reds of cinnabar, or the earthy yellows of orpiment would undergo this transformative process. This grinding was a labor of immense patience, sometimes taking hours or even days for a single batch of pigment, ensuring that the particles were fine enough to blend smoothly with binders and flow evenly from the delicate brushes. Once ground, these precious powders would then be carefully mixed with binders to create usable paints. The most common binder for manuscript illumination was egg yolk tempera, a remarkably durable and luminous medium. Picture hands carefully separating egg yolks, diluting them with a precise amount of water or vinegar, and then slowly, precisely, incorporating the powdered pigment, stirring until the mixture achieved the perfect consistency, neither too thick nor too thin, allowing for smooth application and vibrant color. The visual highlights this alchemy, the transformation from inert mineral to radiant paint, all through the quiet, focused labor of these dedicated artisans. The very air around them might carry faint, subtle scents of these raw, natural materials. Once the individual quires, the folded sheets that would make up sections of the book, were copied and illuminated, they passed into the hands of another crucial, unsung hero, the bookbinder. This was a meticulous craft, combining structural engineering with aesthetic finishing, transforming a pile of loose sheets into a durable, cohesive, and often beautiful volume. The binder's work was essential for the long-term survival of the manuscript. Imagine the binder at their station, perhaps using a specialized sewing frame. Loose parchment quires, each a complete section of the manuscript, would be carefully arranged in their correct order. Then, with a sturdy needle and strong linen thread, the binder would meticulously sew these quires together onto raised cords or thongs, often made of hemp or leather. This was a rhythmic, almost hypnotic motion, thread passing through the folds of the quires and wrapping around the cords, creating a flexible, yet incredibly strong, spine. The intricate pattern of the stitching ensured that the book block would remain tightly bound for centuries. After the quires were sewn, the book block would be carefully prepared for its covers. The raised cords from the sewing would be laced through sturdy wooden boards, often made of oak or beech, which would form the front and back covers. The cords were then gently hammered flat and secured into grooves on the inside of the boards, creating an incredibly strong and durable attachment. Finally, the wooden boards would be covered, often with leather, sometimes plain, sometimes elaborately tooled with blind stamp designs or even embellished with metal fittings, jewels, or enamel work for more opulent volumes. The edges of the parchment might be stained or gilded, adding another layer of protection and beauty. The finished book would often be fitted with metal clasps or straps to keep the covers securely closed, protecting the precious parchment within from dust, light, and warping. The visual conveys this entire journey, from loose sheets to a finished, beautiful, and enduring object, embodying the collective, unsung efforts behind its creation. The soft creak of the wooden press, the subtle scent of leather, these would be the quiet accompaniments to the binder's work. These parchmenters, ink and pigment makers, and binders were the unsung heroes of the medieval scriptorium. Their names are largely forgotten, their individual contributions often unrecorded, but their skill, patience, and dedication were absolutely fundamental to the preservation of knowledge. Without their painstaking efforts, the scribe's quill would have had no surface, no ink, and the completed pages no lasting form. They remind us that the creation of a medieval manuscript was a profound act of communal endeavor, a silent, collaborative masterpiece where each specialized role, however humble, contributed to a grand, shared purpose, ensuring that the quiet whispers of history and wisdom would endure for generations to come, carefully cradled in the sturdy embrace of a handcrafted book. Let this understanding of their collective, quiet power soothe your thoughts as you drift into a peaceful slumber. Chapter 8. Patrons and Purpose. Who commissioned and used these books? Our tranquil journey through the intricate world of medieval scribes now brings us to a crucial understanding. While the scribes themselves performed the painstaking labor, the creation of these magnificent books was often driven by the will and resources of patrons, and their purpose was profoundly shaped by the needs of their users. Tonight, we gently unravel the stories of who commissioned these precious volumes and for what profound purposes they were brought into being, revealing the silent dialogue between the creators and the beneficiaries of these enduring works of art and knowledge. Imagine, if you will, the diverse individuals and institutions that sought to acquire these meticulously crafted manuscripts. At the very heart of medieval society, the church, in all its myriad forms, was the predominant patron. Monasteries themselves were the primary engines of book production, not just for external patrons but, first and foremost, for their own internal needs. Picture a revered abbot or an esteemed abbess in a quiet, contemplative chapter house, perhaps seated at a simple wooden table, meticulously commissioning a new liturgical text, a missal for the Mass, a breviary for daily prayers, a lectionary for scripture readings, or a hymnal for chanted praises. These books were essential to the rhythm of monastic life, the very blueprint of their spiritual devotion. They needed books for their choirs, for their individual devotions, for their daily rituals, and for their communal studies. The monastic scriptorium was, in essence, an internal publishing house, silently catering to the spiritual and intellectual needs of its own community, ensuring that the sacred words were constantly available and accurately preserved for generations of monks and nuns to come. Beyond the immediate monastic community, the church's vast network of cathedrals, collegiate churches, and individual parishes also required books. A wealthy bishop might commission an elaborate gospel book for his cathedral's high altar, adorned with the finest gold and pigments, a testament to the glory of God and the majesty of his diocese. A humble parish priest might simply need a new copy of a sermon collection or a basic liturgical calendar. Each commission, regardless of its grandeur, stemmed from a profound need to facilitate worship, to teach doctrine, and to spread the sacred word. The visual of a devoted bishop, perhaps in muted, rich robes, kneeling before a saintly figure or a newly finished, resplendent book, conveys the deep sacred purpose of this patronage. Yet, patronage was by no means limited to the clergy. As the High Middle Ages progressed and wealth became more concentrated outside monastic walls, secular patrons emerged as significant forces in the commissioning of manuscripts. Powerful kings and queens, influential dukes and counts, and later, wealthy merchants, all sought to acquire books. For royalty and nobility, books were not just tools for devotion or study, they were also potent symbols of status, power, and prestige. A magnificent, richly illuminated history chronicle might be commissioned to legitimize a dynasty's claim to power, beautifully depicting their lineage and triumphs. A romance cycle, filled with tales of chivalry and courtly love, would serve as entertainment and a reflection of courtly ideals. Imagine a scene of quiet grandeur, a powerful king or queen, perhaps in a secluded chamber of their castle, overseeing a scribe presenting a newly completed historical chronicle or a splendid book of hours. The visual subtly conveys their wealth and authority, but the emphasis remains on the quiet act of patronage, the appreciation for the craftsmanship, rather than overt displays of power. These books might have been kept in private libraries, displayed on special occasions, or gifted to favored vassals, spreading influence and demonstrating cultivated taste. The very act of owning a book, especially an illuminated one, was a mark of supreme distinction, a silent testament to one's education and importance in a largely illiterate society. Beyond who commissioned them, the purpose and practical use of these books reveal the diverse ways they shaped medieval life. For the monastic scholar and university student, the books were tools for study and intellectual inquiry. Picture a monk or a university scholar in a quiet monastery library, perhaps hunched over a massive, heavy theological treatise or a philosophical text. They might be using a reading pointer or even a small, sharp tool to follow the lines of text, their brow furrowed in concentration. The atmosphere in such a setting was one of profound focus, the quiet rustle of pages and the soft murmur of contemplation being the only sounds. These books were not merely read, they were studied, analyzed, and often memorized. They were the very foundation of medieval thought, the wellspring from which new ideas and arguments would flow. For the devout layman or noblewoman, particularly from the 13th century onwards, the most popular commissioned book was often the Book of Hours. This was a personalized prayer book, designed for private devotion throughout the day, following the monastic hours. Imagine a noblewoman, depicted elegantly but softly, in the intimate setting of her private chamber. She holds a small, exquisitely bound and beautifully illuminated Book of Hours, its pages shimmering with gold and vibrant colors, her head slightly bowed in personal prayer. The soft light filtering through a window illuminates the scene, emphasizing the profound sense of personal devotion and the intimate relationship between the individual and their sacred text. These books were tangible companions in spiritual life, cherished possessions passed down through families. Beyond the religious and aristocratic spheres, manuscripts served crucial administrative and legal functions. Guilds might commission charters and statutes to record their rules and privileges. Towns and cities required record books to document laws, property ownership, and significant events. Feudal lords kept meticulous cartularies, collections of all the charters and legal documents pertaining to their lands and rights. Imagine a medieval court official or a diligent lawyer, perhaps in a quiet, organized administrative office, consulting a large, open book of laws or a weighty chartulary. The visual highlights the practical, essential administrative function of written records, underscoring that books were the backbone of medieval governance and legal systems. These were not works of art, but tools of governance, their script clear and precise, their purpose undeniably utilitarian. Moreover, manuscripts played a vital role in education. Before the advent of widespread printing, the only way to disseminate knowledge was through hand copying. Universities relied heavily on manuscripts for teaching. Picture a medieval university professor, perhaps in a modest lecture hall, standing before a small, attentive group of students. He is lecturing from a large, open scientific or philosophical text, its pages filled with complex diagrams or arguments. The students, stylized and engaged, are quietly taking notes, absorbing the knowledge being transmitted. This scene subtly emphasizes the critical role of books as educational instruments, fundamental to the intellectual discourse and the slow, steady progress of learning. In conclusion, the medieval manuscript was far more than a collection of words on parchment, it was a reflection of the society that created it. Its existence spoke of profound spiritual devotion, immense social status, the practicalities of governance, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. The patrons, with their diverse motivations, provided the impetus, and the scribes, illuminators, parchmenters, and binders, with their silent, collective dedication, brought these visions to life. Each book, whether a lavish gospel or a simple legal record, carried within its pages the quiet aspirations and daily realities of medieval life. As we gently draw this chapter to a close, allow your mind to envision a final, wide, almost ethereal visual, a single, beautifully opened manuscript page, bathed in a soft, timeless light. The page contains a harmonious mix of elegant script and a gentle illumination. Around it, very subtle, shimmering, almost translucent layers of light seem to quietly emanate, suggesting the countless lives it has touched, the knowledge it has quietly shared, and the silent, enduring purposes it has served over centuries. This serene image slowly, peacefully fades to a deep, restful black, leaving you with the quiet understanding of the profound, multifaceted roles these books played, and the lasting legacy of those who brought them into being. Chapter 9. The Scribe's Inner World, Devotion, Isolation, and Personal Reflections. Our tranquil immersion into the world of medieval scribes now deepens, inviting us to contemplate a realm even more profound than their external labors, the scribe's inner world. This was a landscape shaped by devotion, isolation, and the quiet crucible of personal reflection, often profoundly influenced by the very text they meticulously copied. To truly understand these unsung heroes, we must look beyond the disciplined hand and consider the mind and spirit that guided it, a consciousness deeply intertwined with their sacred task. For many scribes, particularly those in monastic orders, their work was not merely a secular trade, it was a profound act of piety and prayer. Each stroke of the quill, each carefully formed letter, was a silent offering, a physical manifestation of their devotion to God. Imagine a scribe meticulously copying a passage from the Gospels, or a psalm. The words would not simply pass through their eyes to their hand, they would resonate within their very being. The act of copying could become a form of meditation, a continuous engagement with sacred scripture. Their thoughts, perhaps, would drift from the physical act of writing to the spiritual meaning of the words, contemplating the divine truths contained within each phrase. This was a form of active contemplation, where intellectual focus met spiritual absorption. The rhythmic scratch of the quill, the steady turning of pages, could induce a meditative state, a profound sense of inner peace that allowed the scribe to transcend the mundane and connect with the divine. The subtle, ambient sound of distant, low, harmonic Gregorian chant might occasionally drift into the scriptorium, further deepening this sense of spiritual immersion. This deep spiritual engagement was often fostered by the pervasive isolation of monastic life. While scribes worked in communal spaces like the scriptorium, their labor was inherently solitary. Each monk sat at their own lectern, absorbed in their individual task, communication often limited to gestures or hushed whispers. This enforced silence and solitude, far from being a burden, could be a fertile ground for introspection and spiritual growth. Imagine a scribe pausing mid-stroke, their hand still holding the quill, their gaze subtly drifting inward. This brief, almost imperceptible pause might not be a moment of distraction, but a silent beat of contemplation, a fleeting prayer inspired by the very words they were transcribing. Then, with a renewed sense of quiet purpose, their hand would gently resume writing, each letter formed with an added layer of spiritual intentionality. This rhythm of intense focus punctuated by moments of quiet reflection was central to their inner world. The monastic routine itself, with its rigorous schedule of prayer, communal meals, and disciplined labor, reinforced this inner focus. The visual of monks walking silently in a sun-dappled cloister garden underscores this structured, unhurried pace of life. Every activity was designed to encourage mindfulness, to strip away worldly distractions, and to direct the individual towards a deeper understanding of their faith. The scriptorium, therefore, was not just a workshop, it was an extension of the chapel, a place where the act of creating became an extension of prayer. Yet, amidst this collective devotion and structured isolation, the individual scribe's personal reflections and unique spirit sometimes found subtle ways to manifest. These were the quiet whispers of personality, the gentle imprints of an individual mind on a collaborative work. One of the most fascinating glimpses into a scribe's inner world comes from the colophon. This was a small, often unassuming note placed at the very end of a completed manuscript, usually in a cramped hand, where the scribe might record their name, the date of completion, and sometimes a brief, humble prayer, a personal blessing, or even a fleeting, candid comment. Phrases like, "Finish this book, Deo gracious, thanks be to God," or "Here ends the book, may the writer gain a drink," a gentle, almost humorous plea for refreshment after long toil, or "He who does not know how to write thinks it is no labor. 3 fingers write, but the whole body toils." These simple lines are incredibly poignant. They are the quiet signatures of anonymous individuals, reaching out across centuries, revealing their weariness, their piety, and their unique sense of humor. These unassuming colophons are tiny windows into the soul of the medieval scribe, reminding us of their profound humanity. Beyond explicit notes, a scribe's personality could also be discerned through more subtle means. Imagine a close-up on a page where, perhaps, a scribe's hand, subconsciously, formed a particular letter with a slightly unique flourish, a tiny deviation from the prescribed style that became a recognizable signature to a discerning eye. Or perhaps a tiny, almost hidden, idiosyncratic detail in a marginal drawing, a particular way of depicting a leaf, or a specific, quirky expression on a human face within an illumination. These minor variations, often unintentional, serve as a silent whisper of the individual's unique hand and fleeting mood. Sometimes, even the meticulousness of the corrections could tell a story. A scribe who endlessly scraped away every tiny imperfection, striving for unattainable perfection, might reveal a deeply meticulous or even anxious personality. Conversely, a scribe who left minor but legible errors might suggest a more pragmatic, less obsessive approach to their work. The scribe's inner world was also shaped by the very content they copied. Imagine spending years, sometimes decades, transcribing religious texts, the solemn pronouncements of prophets, the comforting words of psalms, the profound wisdom of church fathers. Such constant immersion in sacred scripture would inevitably deepen their own faith and understanding. For scribes who copied classical texts, philosophical treatises, or scientific works, their inner world would be filled with the ideas of ancient thinkers, grappling with questions of logic, cosmology, and human nature. The very act of transmitting these ideas, of becoming a conduit for knowledge, would inevitably transform their own understanding of the world. They were not just copyists, they were silent interpreters, deeply engaged with the intellectual currents of their time, even if their engagement was expressed through the quiet act of transcription rather than overt commentary. The monastic cell, a space of personal isolation, also played a crucial role in the scribes' inner life. While much of their day was communal, the cell provided a small, private sanctuary for personal prayer, study, and reflection. Picture a simple monastic cell at night, the light very dim, perhaps from a single, flickering candle. A small, open book might rest on a humble bedside table, its pages bearing the faint glow. This scene conveys not just physical isolation, but a dedicated space for deep, quiet introspection, a respite from the communal rhythms, allowing the scribe to further process the intellectual and spiritual content of their day. In essence, the medieval scribe's hidden life was a continuous interplay between external discipline and internal devotion, between meticulous labor and profound contemplation. They were conduits for knowledge, but also spiritual pilgrims, their inner journeys mirroring the unfolding narratives within the very books they created. Their silent dedication, born from a blend of piety, intellectual curiosity, and an acceptance of isolation, allowed them to become the quiet, steadfast bridge between past wisdom and future understanding. As we conclude this intimate exploration of the scribe's inner world, allow your mind to absorb the profound quietude of their devotion and the subtle echoes of their individual spirits. Picture a final, wide, almost abstract visual of swirling, translucent, soft light and shadow. Within this ethereal space, very faint, indistinct outlines of monastic script or illuminated fragments appear and then gently dissolve, symbolizing the individual scribe's quiet spiritual journey and their lasting, yet often anonymous, contribution to the collective. This beautiful, tranquil image slowly fades to a deep, peaceful black, inviting you to embrace the profound quiet and drift into a restorative, untroubled slumber. Chapter 10. The Legacy, Echoes of the Scribes in the Modern World. As our tranquil journey through the hidden lives of medieval scribes gently draws to its close, we now turn our attention to the enduring reverberations of their quiet labor. It is time to explore their lasting legacy, to trace the subtle yet profound echoes of the scribes in the modern world. Though centuries separate us from their hushed scriptoria and their painstaking work, the influence of these silent guardians of knowledge remains deeply embedded in the very fabric of our intellectual and cultural landscape. Consider, first, the sheer act of writing itself. The fundamental techniques, the very forms of the letters we use today, owe an immeasurable debt to the medieval scribes. The development of legible, consistent script, perfected over centuries within monastic walls, laid the groundwork for all subsequent writing. Imagine a seamless transition, the elegant hand of a medieval scribe, guiding a quill across parchment, slowly morphing into a modern hand using a sophisticated fountain pen, then eventually, to the silent, rhythmic tap of fingers on a computer keyboard. The tools evolve, but the essence of the act, the deliberate formation of symbols to convey thought, remains a timeless continuity, a direct lineage back to the scribe's careful hand. The very concept of a text, of paragraphs, columns, and ordered pages, was refined and standardized within the scriptorium, shaping the way information is presented and consumed even in our digital age. Beyond the mechanics of writing, the design principles of medieval manuscripts continue to influence how we interact with books today. The careful use of margins, the deliberate spacing of lines, the hierarchical use of different script sizes for headings and body text, the placement of illustrations in relation to text, these were all perfected by scribes and illuminators. Imagine a subtle, side-by-side comparison, a detail from a medieval manuscript, with its precisely ruled columns and elegantly framed text, appearing next to a page from a beautifully designed modern book. The visual similarities, though often subtle, are striking, demonstrating the enduring power of these ancient design choices. They are echoes of the scribe's aesthetic sensibility, a quiet testament to their understanding of readability and visual harmony. The very act of opening a book, even a mass-produced one, connects us, perhaps unconsciously, to the long tradition initiated by these medieval artisans. Moreover, the scribes' most tangible legacy lies in the vast repository of knowledge they preserved. Without their ceaseless dedication, much of the classical wisdom of Greece and Rome, its philosophy, its science, its medicine, its literature, would have been irrevocably lost to the Western world. They were the diligent custodians who kept the flame of learning flickering during periods of great upheaval. Imagine a modern scholar, perhaps in a quiet, climate-controlled archive or museum, gently examining an actual medieval manuscript, its ancient pages imbued with the quiet history of centuries. Their hands, protected by white gloves, reverently turn the brittle parchment, connecting directly to the unnamed scribe who labored over its creation. This careful study is not merely academic curiosity. It is a profound act of continuing the legacy, of engaging directly with the physical manifestation of preserved knowledge. The art of calligraphy itself, a refined and beautiful form of handwriting practiced by enthusiasts and artists today, is a direct homage to the scribal tradition. Imagine a close-up on a modern calligrapher's desk: elegant fountain pens, specialized inks in various hues, smooth, high-quality papers. A skilled hand might be seen practicing a flowing, intricate script, clearly drawing inspiration from the Gothic or uncial letterforms perfected by medieval scribes. This contemporary practice is a living, breathing connection to the historical craftsmanship, a quiet appreciation for the beauty and discipline inherent in the handwritten word. It is a testament to the enduring human desire to create something beautiful and meaningful with one's own hand, just as the scribes did. The advent of the printing press in the 15th century, often seen as the end of the scribal era, was in fact the ultimate triumph of their legacy. Johannes Gutenberg and his contemporaries did not invent writing or bookmaking, they mechanized it. Their earliest typefaces were meticulously designed to imitate the elegant hands of the scribes themselves, a conscious effort to leverage the established aesthetic and familiarity of manuscript books. Imagine a subtle visual of early printing presses, stylized and not overly mechanical, perhaps with an open, early printed book nearby. The light is still soft, emphasizing the quiet revolution. The scribes had already done the immense work of standardizing texts, developing clear scripts, and establishing conventions for page layout. Without this centuries-long foundation laid by the monastic scriptoria, the printing revolution would have been far more chaotic and less effective. The mass dissemination of knowledge, which printing enabled, was built directly upon the careful, laborious efforts of the scribes. Even in our hyperdigital age, the echoes of the scribe persist. The very concept of a digital library, vast repositories of knowledge accessible at the touch of a screen, mirrors the aspiration of the monastic library to collect and preserve all available wisdom. When a modern scholar or student accesses an ancient text on a digital screen, perhaps zooming in on an illuminated initial or searching for a specific phrase, they are engaging with knowledge that, more often than not, was originally preserved and transmitted by a medieval scribe. The setting might be contemporary and quiet, but the essence of the act, the pursuit of understanding from a carefully preserved record, remains unchanged. The subtle whir of a computer fan or the soft glow of a screen are but the modern-day equivalents of the scribe's quill and flickering candle. Ultimately, the hidden lives of medieval scribes were not just about copying words, they were about the profound act of preserving memory, fostering learning, and ensuring continuity. Their dedication, often performed in anonymity and isolation, has shaped the very way we think about knowledge, how we access it, and how we interact with the written word. They were the silent architects of our intellectual heritage, the quiet bridge builders between the past and our present. Their legacy is not etched in grand monuments but whispered in the turning of every page, in the clarity of every font, and in the enduring power of every idea that has flowed from antiquity to us. As our deep dive into the world of medieval scribes reaches its peaceful conclusion, allow your mind to absorb the vastness of their silent contribution. Picture a final, ethereal animation, swirling, translucent particles of soft light, representing knowledge and history, gently coalescing from across the entire screen. These particles slowly, gracefully form into the subtle, glowing outline of a single, majestic, medieval illuminated manuscript, its details indistinct but its form unmistakable. This luminous representation of enduring knowledge then slowly, beautifully, fades into a deep, pervasive black, leaving a lasting impression of the scribe's quiet, timeless legacy, a silent, perpetual beacon that continues to guide us through the vast ocean of time, inviting a restorative, untroubled slumber. You've journeyed deep into the quiet world of medieval scribes, their meticulous craft, and their profound impact. Now, it's time to bring our tranquil exploration to a gentle close. As the final whispers of our journey through the hidden lives of medieval scribes begin to fade, let us take a moment to reflect on the profound legacy they left behind. We have ventured into their sanctuaries, touched their humble tools, observed their disciplined rhythms, admired their vibrant art, understood their role as guardians, and glimpsed the quiet depths of their inner worlds. We've seen how their patient, often anonymous labor, performed within the hushed walls of monasteries, forged the very foundations of our intellectual heritage. Their story is not one of grand pronouncements or heroic battles, but of quiet, persistent dedication. It's the story of countless hours bent over a lectern, the rhythmic scratch of quill on parchment, the gentle shimmer of gold brought to life by a meticulous hand. It's the story of minds immersed in ancient wisdom, meticulously copying texts, ensuring that the fragile threads of knowledge would not unravel in the tapestry of time. In our bustling, digital world, where information streams in endless currents, it's easy to overlook the quiet miracle of a hand-copied book. But the scribes remind us of the immense value of each word, each page, each thoughtfully created volume. They teach us the power of patience, the beauty of precision, and the enduring importance of preservation. Their legacy isn't just in the ancient manuscripts that grace our libraries and museums, it's woven into the very structure of our books, the clarity of our fonts, and the fundamental ways we conceive of and transmit knowledge. The quiet hum of their creation, once confined to monastic scriptoria, echoes still in every act of writing, every moment of thoughtful reading, every endeavor to understand and share wisdom. As you drift now into the embrace of peaceful rest, carry with you the tranquil image of these unsung heroes. May their quiet devotion inspire a deeper appreciation for the enduring power of the written word, and may the echoes of their timeless work guide you to a restorative and untroubled slumber. Good night, gentle soul.